We're going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council work session to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Lauer,
Yes.
Alderman Sage,
Here.
Alderman Malomboy,
Here.
Alderman Burgess,
Here.
Alderman Painter, Alderman Schmidt,
Here.
Alderman Black, Alderman Hallman, Alderman Fruin, Mayor Renner.
Here. Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and start with public comment. We have 4 people, and you have up to 3 minutes to address the council. We're going to start with Larry Blake, and then if Jim Thompson could be prepared to follow him.
Hi there.
Thanks, Larry.
First time for everything. I would like to take the opportunity to thank you for letting me talk about the issues on golf. Mr. Hales, as city manager, it's your responsibility on how the departments are managed, and why have we let the golf courses get to this point? And why haven't we dealt with this sooner? Have you asked each of the course managers how and where they can make the cuts for the upcoming year? Have you asked Highlands manager what needs to be done to get that course back into the black? It's a direct reflection upon you on how well or how bad our departments functions, both financially and how with the satisfaction of the citizens of Bloomington. If the city council decides to get an independent contract to manage our courses, is this not an indication that you and your departments are not capable of doing the job? With all the courses being in the Parks and Rec budget, why isn't it, and maybe they are, I don't know, all 3 courses combined? It shows in 2016 projected that Highland will lose $28,508. The Den will have a profit of $33,081. Prairie Vista will have a profit of $187,000. If you add all these up, the combined profits is $191,000. The golf courses are not losing money. 2017, it's projected that Highland will lose only $14,790. The Den making $47,029. Prairie Vista making $174,596. If you combine all 3 of these, the profit again is $206,835. It is also stated that there are improvements needed. Highland needing $1.3 million in renovations. The Den at $150,000 and Prairie Vista at $244,000. Before we go out and hire an outside consultant to make the decision for you, I'm quite sure by sitting down with the course managers, these numbers could be reduced for next year. With the figures, one can clearly see that Highland has a target on its back. Mr. Hales, you and most of your managers and staff are not from Bloomington. Highland doesn't mean anything to you except it's a golf course and it's losing money. But to us that have lived here for most of our lives, it is much more than a piece of ground. It's part of us. It's Bloomington. Highland caters to mostly seniors and beginners, being the most cost-effective for them, but yet challenging them. And by the way, how much money does it take to maintain our parks? And what's it costing? How much money do our parks make, and how does it take to maintain them? And looking at the...
You can have to finish. I'm sorry, Larry. You're going to have to finish up. Your time's up.
Okay, just let me finish. To compare the cost of the golf courses on how much we spent on the Coliseum last year, you would think you would be looking at having somebody take that over instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Thompson? And then Donald Shields and Roger Eckert.
On the clock. We, a bunch of our fellow golfers, have been observing this money-saving project of the task force for the past months with great interest. We have heard suggestions of raising garbage fees, closing the cultural center, closing Highland, and others, all ideas that could help the financial problems of the city. Now we have tonight option 1 and 2 to privatize the management of the golf courses, options that will save the city nothing financially. These options save the city the responsibility of preserving the quality of the courses. They will eliminate the dedication of and hard work by the golf course staff and the maintenance people because they will be, quote, unnecessary. They will get the city out of the golf course business because the city staff will no longer be in charge of handling the courses. Unfortunately, however, these so-called savings are all contrary to the mission statement of the city of Bloomington. We do know that in this actuality, 4 options were originally prepared for this presentation tonight, but for some reason, options 3 and 4 were left out of this presentation. We question why viable option 4 has been removed. This option is to keep the current staff and move the golf courses out of the enterprise zone and back to the general fund, and eliminate the $139,000 administrative fee charged to the courses. Also, this option would include forgiving the charge for water for Highland that averages $50,000 a year that is paid to the city water department. These 2 items would save $190,000 a year in expenses. This 4th option would also include changing the fee structure at the 3 courses, which in turn would increase revenue. We feel that these changes would, 1, keep the ownership and management with the people who truly care about the course, and 2, make enough money to minimize or eliminate city financial support. The question then is this: how best can an informed decision be made on this issue? We recommend that a 6-person advisory committee be formed that would consist of 3 golfers from the Chamber of Commerce and the Joint Economic Development Council, and 3 season pass holders from each of the golf courses to work with Jason Wingate, the PGA Pro. These knowledgeable people can provide better informed ideas to the mayor, city council, city manager regarding what the citizens of Bloomington want.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have Donald Shields and then Roger Eckert.
Members of the council, good evening. I didn't come with a prepared speech. I'm just a retired person that loves the game of golf. Have grown up in Bloomington most all of my life when I was not out working in Massachusetts and Chicago, but always come back home and always come back home to Highland Golf Course. Now, I've heard a lot of things going on about what's going to happen to Highland, the cost. I've heard vicious rumors about it being developed into housing. Mayor Rennert, is that true?
Well, just to make it clear here, we're going to talk about this. We have public comment. We do not respond here. If you want direct answers, just so that everybody understands, we have a mayor's open house on Friday, and some of the people here came and got some answers, 4:30 to 5:30. This is for people to make their attitudes known.
Okay.
And then we will be answering all of these questions as we begin to discuss this evening.
Okay, fine. If the finance is the issue for Highland and the other golf courses, My wife plays Highland. A lot of our friends play Highland. I play it. I like it. It's a great course. I'm not PGA Pro qualified or anything like that, but I would hate like everything to see that course go away. If you need to do something, raise the fees $1. You played 19,000 rounds at Highland, that's 19,000 extra dollars, and we're in the hole, what, $9,000? And it's going to make money next year if you raise it another dollar. So I would suggest an offer. I think most of us can afford $1 a round. So I stand there, and I think most everybody that plays golf would chip in $1 if we're really that bad and we can't manage our finances any better than that. Thank you.
Sure. Again, all of the answers to all these questions will be had when we discuss this. Roger Eckert, thank you.
I'm also here to comment on the Bloomington golf situation. Contrary to much of the rest of the United States, I think golf in Bloomington and the Bloomington Normal area is on the rise again. Last year we had over 60,000 rounds played in the Bloomington public golf courses, second most in their history. We had more outings than we've ever had. We host the Illinois High School State Golf Tournament. That's a 3-day event. The Illinois Elementary School Association has just started golf. We hosted their sectional this year at Prairie Vista. Country Company's Youth Classic is a 3-day event in which every public course in Bloomington is overrun with kids for 3 days, and they're brought here by their parents. And the reason we host these tournaments is because of the quality of our golf courses. These events and events like them financially benefit the whole community. Hotels, restaurants, gas stations, shopping areas. After the state tournament, I went to 9 hotels, 3 of whom have golf packages with the Bloomington public courses. I asked each one of them, were you full last weekend, the weekend of the tournament? Every one of them said yes. Second question, are you usually full on the weekends? Every one of them said no. The generalized comment was only if there's some kind of a sporting event going on in the Bloomington Normal area. I also went to Casey's gas station on Fox Creek Road, which is right on the exit area when you're playing at the Den. One of the golf tournaments was at the Den. Asked him about appreciable increase in gas sales, and he printed out the numbers for me. They sold 1,826 more gallons of gas that weekend than they did the weekend before, and that was a 34% increase on that Saturday when everybody would have been leaving. I'm also the one who did the petition that you hear so much about. I did that at the Den after rounds of golf that I played, just sitting in the pro shop or in the clubhouse there and collecting signatures. I did that over a 2-week period, which after I play golf, that was probably an 8 to 10 day stretch. I learned 2 things. We get golfers from everywhere here. There are golfers from Wisconsin that look at the Bloomington Normal area like we look at the Ozarks or Kentucky when it comes to going south in the spring or in the fall. We had golfers on that petition from Cincinnati, St. Louis, Chicago, LaSalle, Morris, Springfield. The other thing I learned from that petition was privatization is a bad word to these golfers. And talking to them, there's no stake in the community, not much stake in the golf course. They aren't going to pick up the tab for any capital improvements. They won't even buy you a new lawnmower.
I'm sorry, you have to wrap up. Your time's up. I'm
They'll
sorry.
raise fees, and they'll cut personnel and they'll cut expenses. And bottom line is, if we lose our golf courses because people don't take care of them, we're never going to get them back. And then instead of a room full of golfers, you'll be sitting here with a room full of hotel owners and restaurant owners and gas station owners.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the presentation of the hybrid option for Lutz Road. And Mr. Karch?
Mayor and City Council will make this very brief, just so we can get right to discussion. With this topic, this is a touch point tonight for a project that's been ongoing for a few years. So on the southwest side of town, Lutz Road is a road that we've discussed multiple times over the years. Residents have come and discussed concerns with the width of the road, the condition of the road. A feasibility study is what's been completed and what's included in the packet. The feasibility study, the intention of it was to look at the existing road and what potential options there are. So knowing that you've looked over the material, I won't go in it point by point. We know that Luther Oaks itself is a growing area, a growing business. We do know that there's also expansion with subdivisions in the area, so there are continued improvements. They looked at three different options. If you consider them more of a more cost-effective option, a very more like a full comprehensive, and then more of a hybrid option. The easiest and simplest, cheapest is the rural cross-section. Staff is not supportive of this one because it doesn't necessarily solve the long-term problem. It's a short-term solution that necessarily doesn't spend the money that keeps the long-term cost. The second one is the urban design. It is more of the almost $900,000 option that again is it's very costly, and we don't believe that the development there is yet to justify that. The last option, and what is recommended in the feasibility study and supported by Luther Oaks, is the hybrid design, which does build out the north side with curb and gutter and storm sewer, but on the south it leaves it not completed. It leaves it more of a rural cross-section to be developed in the future when development happens. So again, with that, we're just a touch point. There's no vote needed. What we wanted to ask is to make sure that there's no concerns with the feasibility study. Then we are now, it's already under contract to continue forward with design, but staff feels it's important to make sure that council's on board with the direction we're going. We did not want to get to the end, have a design done, and then have there be concerns. So that after that design is done, we have to find funding, and then construction would begin.
Questions, comments for Mr. Karch? Alderman Fruin.
Sure. Jim, you made a couple very good points, and we've talked about Lutz Road for a long time. But I think in the time since we've started talking about this, it seems to me to be a developing area. Wittenberg Woods seems to be a growing neighborhood. You've got a popular school there in Trinity Lutheran. You've got easy access to the interstate system. My thought is, are we looking at the short-term fix, or are we looking at something that we think is going to look, what's it going to look like in 5 years?
Yeah,
So I'm looking at more of a bigger picture because I see Wittenberg Woods growing. I see that whole area having as much potential as a lot of pockets in Bloomington Normal. And I don't know what other development is going to come out there, but if we're going to do this, let's do it right, is my thought.
I very much appreciate that, Alderman Fruin. A quick answer to that is the property to the south, the Hinshaw property to the south that would need to be developed, has to have sewer, a lift station. We called it the I-74 lift station. That would have to be constructed before that whole area to the south gets actually developed. So we think that we don't anticipate that's going to come anytime soon with the existing residential areas that are already have the capacity for sewer and water. So we don't anticipate that. You can never guess. Maybe somebody will come in next year, but we believe this hybrid option does allow for that both short-term and mid-term. It definitely isn't a 20 or 30-year solution, but we definitely believe it is the 10 to 20 solution.
And my other question, I think maybe to David or whoever wants to answer it, is we recently approved an assisted living facility on Fox Creek Road. Is it Hollybrook? Does that sound right?
Bills of Hollybrook? Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they're going to be asking for any assistance on herb gutter roads. Maybe it's already in place. But I thought someone mentioned, or I read somewhere, that that same firm is also thinking of putting an assisted living facility at the corner of GE Road and Tawanda Barnes, the northeast corner. And so my thinking is, whatever we're going to do with Luther Oaks, assisted living, kind of on the edge of town, the urban issue, are we going to be assisting Hollybrook when they come to the table in, whether it's on Fox Creek Road or on Tawanda Barnes? Is there any implications that whatever we do here might spill over to those facilities.
So brief answer to that question, the infrastructure is already there for the villas of Hollybrook at Fox Creek and Cabintown and Old Cabintown. It's already all around that. Roads have been improved. And while Luther Oaks is one of the major stakeholders, they're not the only stakeholder for Lutz Road. The Wittenberg Woods development also is a driver because of some of the overall, that road is again, that more of the county type road and the heavy traffic that it's experiencing. We're seeing it degrade more quickly than we would anticipate. And so because of that, it has, risen as far as a priority with us. Hopefully, and same thing with the GE and Tawanda Barnes. That infrastructure around there is completely in place. And so it is not only for that one stakeholder, it is an important facility for the city that we want to make sure we maintain.
My closing comment, Jim, would be, again, repeat myself, if we're going to do something, let's do it for the future and do it right.
Thank you. Alderman Sage and Lauer.
Thank you. And let me follow up, Jim. I want to expand on your explanation just a little bit because Jim Fruin asked a good question. Basically, the hybrid solution constructs half of the urban design, if you will, on the north side of the road. So basically, there is the long-term solution for that site. What it does, Jim, is to then utilize parts of the existing pavement on the road that's there right now so that we have a more appropriately sized road down through there with some shoulder and pavement area down through there as well. So again, following up on Jim Karch's point, there'll be infrastructure work needed on the south side of the road that's not being touched at this point. The north side would be constructed and as if the entire road was being reconstructed at this time. Is that accurate, Jim?
Yes, and what I would actually point up to the screen for you right now that you can see that we'd be going to 11-foot lanes. Right now you have about 7.5 to 8-foot lanes, and so at its widest it's 8 foot. And so just that width for the traffic that it experiences is part of the
And
issue.
then to follow up, because again, Alderman Fruin asked a couple of good questions. Again, one of the other differences between this installation and a couple others that were mentioned is I know I happened to be on the Planning Commission when this came through, and it was certainly implied by staff at that point. Now, different city manager, different planner, different council, but it was certainly implied as reflected in the meeting minutes at that time that a road improvement would eventually be made there as part of the Luther Oaks construction project. So it's a little bit different is that there has been some assumption, and I think justifiably so, by the Luther Oaks folks that some road improvement would be forthcoming in the future. So a little bit different than the other two installations that we're talking about. Thank you.
Alderman Lauer.
Just kind of to add on to David's comments and question, I'm going to ask you to do kind of a shirt sleeve assumption here a little bit and kind of give us maybe a little bit more information. If, say, something drastic happens, our economy improves, and that area really develops, Luther Oaks Road on the south side, and we want to move to an urban type environment on that south side in 5 years. Certainly well within the life expectancy of the new hybrid approach that we have just put in place. How much of that will we have to cut out and redo to bring it up to the urban standard, Jim?
There's nothing. That's the benefit of the hybrid.
Okay.
That's why we're actually very supportive of it, because you're not removing any of the pavement that you put in place other than the shoulder work. So again, if you look at the hybrid up here on the screen, the material that's there on the left, all of that stays. What you're going to be then kind of removing and putting additional and expanding upon is that south side on the screen, the right side.
Curb and gutter,
to be placed in the
basically,
curb and gutter and prepping
Okay,
for that.
very
So
good.
again, that's why we're supportive
So
of
we're
it.
not wasting our investment here.
Not at
that's my
all.
point.
And even if some development occurs, then you're not at a loss. But again, I would point back to this on the screen. The project area down to the south of this is all farm ground down here. It all drains to the south, I-74. Here's where Wittenberg's Wood Lift Station is at. You would have to extend this down to the south, almost to I-74, to be able to pick up any of that sanitary sewer. That can be cost prohibitive. It has been looked at multiple times by developers, and it just hasn't moved forward because of it.
Thank you, Mayor. And so, Jim, I just wanted to conclude by saying thank you to you. I know Kevin Cothe, I know a number of the members of the engineering staff. We've had countless meetings with Luther Oaks, both their professional staff as well as their residents association, and there has been a tremendous amount of time, and we've looked at literally every option in that area for this. And if there was a more efficient way to do this, we would have found it. And we had those conversations trying to find them.
You know we've tried, exactly.
And so there was a lot of due diligence done. So thank you for all the work involved with this.
Thank you. Based upon these comments, we'll continue to move forward with the design contract with the hybrid option. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. All right. Move right along to our next item, the presentation on the Budget Task Force recommendations regarding Bloomington Golf. We have a brief presentation by Mr. Hales and Eric Veal. And so we'll go ahead and start with that and then have a beginning council discussion. Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to give the council an update on, at your direction, the process of evaluating the feasibility of potential cost savings that may occur or may result from outsourcing of the golf course operations. For the audience benefit, this particular recommendation to look at outsourcing of the golf courses came from the Citizen Budget Task Force group, and with the support of the City Council, and because this was one of the higher rated recommendations that the council identified for staff to work on, basically tonight, what we're going to show you is a process. I think it's important to point out we do not know for a fact that it truly would be cost efficient or that we would achieve any cost savings if we were to outsource the management of the golf course. What we do know that irregardless of whether or not the city continues to maintain the golf courses or a private entity, capital expenditures would continue to be a responsibility of the city. Now let me say that again. Even in cases where cities have outsourced management of golf courses, the responsibility for capital expenditures have, in most cases, continued to be the responsibility of the city. So I think it's important to point that out. Typically, these contracts only deal with the management or the operating expenses of a golf course. What you will see shortly is a process that we propose to follow to only get some factual information, to learn and to kind of compare not only our internal costs with oversight of these golf courses, but also look at what others on the outside would propose. Secondly, what we do want to share with you tonight is what's being considered in the way of proposed increases in golf fees for this upcoming season. That was an additional recommendation of the Budget Task Force to look at golf fee increases. So at this time, I do want to recognize that we do have not only Jason Wingate, our golf pro, but other staff members at our golf courses. We appreciate all that they have done. And I do want to take maybe one comment away from Jay, and that is even as we have talked to various parties out there that might have an interest, we have received many, many compliments of how our golf courses look. And I think that goes to the credit not only of our managers and supervisors, but our employees and all that they have done with a very limited and a lean workforce to continue to make our three golf courses looking great and to be such an attractive entertainment venue for the golfers both in and outside the city. So with that, let me turn to Jay Tetzloff, the Department Director, for some additional information on this topic. Jay.
I appreciate that, City Manager. I am here to kind of give the presentation, and then I've got Jason Wingate from the Superintendent of Golf and Eric Veals, the Assistant Director. They helped me put this together. In fact, they did the majority of the work. We also have some staff here, and what Mr. Hill said, we have a fantastic staff. We run a very lean ship, and we still put out a great product. So I'm very proud of that. And none of this discussion changes any of that. What I wanted to do is just give you you have all this information. I just want to give you a brief, for those of you who don't play golf or don't know, the Den is probably the gem in this area. potentially all of outside of Chicago. It's a course made for those who may be a little bit more advanced, little harder. It's a lot longer of a course. And what one of the public comments was 50% of the people who play this course do not live here. So we are attracting people to come into the community. Prairie Vista is the one where, if like myself, who's not very good at golf and can't hit the ball straight, you go to Prairie Vista. It's much more user-friendly, golfer-friendly, and it's still a fantastic course, beautiful views. Highlands obviously was brought up earlier. This is the course that, if you can hit the ball straight but not very far, this is where you want to go play. Fairways are not huge with lots of trees, but it's not as long as I got my first birdie at Highland. I'll never forget that this year. So it's a great course, very scenic, very grade changes. But we're not the only golf game in town. There's a list there of the courses that are here in the community, with Lakeside and Links being 9-hole courses, the rest of it being 18. A little breakdown of, kind of want to focus on the bottom table here. With my viewpoint, even before the Budget Task Force took on this topic, I talked with Jason Wingate, our superintendent of golf, and I said, I played Highland, and the value and what that course looks like right now is phenomenal. And one way we can look at maybe bringing back some of our cost issues is to raise our fee there. So we're looking at, according to Jason, it's one of the biggest increases we've ever had, if not the biggest. So we are looking at raising our costs, our fees for greens at all three courses going into next fiscal year. So that's 2017's fee, going in for 2016, I should say. Raising the season pass as well, but that is something we have proposed in our budget that has been sent forward. So looking at rounds played, you can see the drop-off, but you also can see the golf coming back. Highland was very popular this year, probably with all the talk that we had with Budget Task Force. Highland became a very popular place to play golf this year. Also wanted to show a little bit of comparables in terms of what other states look like. You can see that the majority of the courses in the states are increasing or improving. So that is for this year going forward. We talked about money. There's lots of numbers here. Obviously, you can look at. You can see in the majority of years, we are making more than we spend. Our issue is capital. We can break even on most years with our operating costs, but it's the capital costs that come back that we have struggled with funding going forward. So we have two different, we're looking at two ways to outsource, two different styles, and there's lots of ways in between. So these are kind of the extreme ends of if you were to outsource. One is a full service contract. This is where we basically are hiring someone to run the courses on our behalf. We have more control over this way, but obviously not as much as if we're running the show ourselves. And you see the fee ranges from 4 to 5% of gross revenues, plus you typically have incentives. The other big difference here is it's a shorter contract. And in this one and in the next option, contract language is key. How you word the contract and the different things you put in versus food and beverage versus cart fees. There's lots of different ways you can write that contract. Second option is an operating lease. This is where someone basically is paying us to run our golf courses. It is the least amount of control, so it's up to them on, in many ways, the quality of the product they're providing. This is the least upside in terms of revenue potential for us, and these leases, these contracts are long-term. They can be as high as 50 years. So again, it comes down to the way the contract's worded and how we go about outsourcing. The process that we're looking at right now is something very similar that I've done before, where we will send out an RFQ, so that's a request for qualifications. So we're only looking at companies who have shown a preference to being a golf operational firm. This is what they do for a living. We don't want somebody who's, hey, I like to play golf and I want to run the golf course. We're looking for track record. We're looking for the qualifications. Can you do this? Have you done this before? Once we get past that point, if you qualify that you've done this before, then you'll be given the request for proposal. So only those who are qualified to run our golf courses will be given the chance to send in a proposal. The big thing I want to point out is even if we're going through the process of gathering all this information in, we will then evaluate internally, and I'm sure we'll have some discussions, whether it is the best interest of our golfers and our citizens to outsource it. I believe that we very well could end up keeping it in-house and running it as we are now. That is certainly a possibility. I don't want to sit here and say, either way, we want to look at what the numbers are, and that's what the Budget Task Force, that's what we heard from the Budget Task Force was, let's see how this shakes out. Can we save costs? We run a very lean ship. Most golf courses have 20 full-time equivalents at an 18-hole golf course. We have 27 for 3 courses. So we are running a very lean ship already. In one conversation with a golf firm company that would be probably one of those companies we would ask to come in and place a bid, they said they would probably hire 13 staff, full-time staff members. He, just sat down, put pen to paper. He came up with the number of 13. We currently have 7. So I have trouble believing that somebody who can have twice as much full-time staff than we do can run it more efficient and better cost efficiency than what we're doing already. So right now what we're looking at is going through this process, being done with the contract potential in July with the idea, the long term would be if they were awarded a contract, it would be January 1st of 2017. So going through the process this year, awarding the contract late fall for them to start January 1 if we were to outsource it. So with that, I'll open up the...
Mayor, if I could just
Yeah.
make one
Sure.
or two final comments. Even as we've talked to some of these vendors, they've acknowledged too that it could very well take them 2, 3, 4 weeks to do their analysis and their financial determination as to whether or not they could even generate any cost savings to make it profitable for them. So hence, it is critical that we give them that time to do their analysis. And of course, we would make available some of our information. So until that happens, we really won't know from them, whether or not they think they could turn a profit or be of some help or assistance to us in keeping the costs low. Secondly, we want to give them a lot of latitude, a lot of flexibility in their proposals, including, unless the council directs otherwise, both you and the Budget Task Force has talked about sale. Would any of these entities be interested in purchasing? That could always be a proposal or alternative, bid alternate, to at least see, do they have an interest? Some of these firms do both own and operate golf courses. Other times they just operate and manage the golf courses. So there's a lot of those types of affairs or models that they use. So once again, what we're trying to do here is to react to what the task force asked or recommended for the council. We feel this is a reasonable process. Ultimately, the council would make that final determination. You will decide whether or not any potential, if there is cost savings, are worth making the change and the disadvantages associated with here. But as I started out saying, keep in mind that even as we've talked to these entities, major capital improvements would continue to be on the shoulders of the city. It is unlikely that unless we get into some very long and potentially risky situation, that we would get out from under any of these capital improvements, such as cart maintenance, and other improvements. So with that, I think the last thing too, it does appear that the best time to effectuate any kind of change, if there is going to be a change, is around the winter time. So that's why we're kind of pushing this out to the fall. We tried to look at whether or not it could happen between now and May, and it just seemed as we talked to these vendors that it would be very, very unlikely, even though we've heard some interesting stories of how quickly sometimes they have come in and quickly turned over when things have gone south. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Just to clarify
on this
then,
process.
to drive home the point to some of the people who have asked questions during public comment, and that is this is a piece of the analysis that the city manager and staff have done pursuant to the Budget Task Force's recommendations last summer. This does not, no decisions have been made. These are all options and ideas on the table. That doesn't mean that the status quo won't also be considered. Obviously, we'll also see if we've got some slight increases in some of the green fees, how much that seems to generate for us. But when we had a structural deficit, this was unfortunately a lot of the Parks and Rec programs are the things that are more likely to be questioned than public safety or other things. So that's just clarifying it. There's no I know that there have been rumor mills. I've had several people call me and even came to the open house on Friday that we're going to pave over Highland Park. That's all just a rumor. We are all here reacting to our overall financial situation, and that the Budget Task Force said at least check, investigate whether or not there are other options to save money. And again, some of those also could just be something that you're proposing, Jay, and that is to raise green fees. So just to clarify that, and Alderman Black, you get the first crack at it.
Thank you. I guess a procedural question for Cherry is that I know that we're supposed to be wrapping up here in like 1 minute. Do I need to make a motion to extend debate so we can procedurally make this an okay?
I mean, I think we're okay as long as we start our other meeting at 7 o'clock, right?
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to see any panic attacks over there. Thank you. So, and thank you for the presentation. To me, this question I know is the first step in a long process, as we can see on the screen here. But the question that I'm focused on is golf a public good? And I would argue that yes, that it is. I play golf. I'm terrible at it. I can bomb it off the tee, but that's about it. But I would say that do we need 3 courses is the question that's facing me. And one of the things I'm not seeing up here is it seems like an all or nothing package. None of these are really like one or the other or 2 of the 3. Is there a reason that we've rigged it up that way?
At this point, through internal discussions, is to leave all 3 together, package all 3 together to outsource. The Den and Prairie Vista obviously have the most value to them from an outside perspective, but right now the staff does not recommend we close Highland.
Sure. Okay. And I would also just to kind of give some clarity on where I'm sitting right now. I think that it's good that we're looking at this. I think it's important that we have these conversations, and I think that every time we talk about a cut, we have a large group of people that come in who are impassioned and concerned about what comes forward. That said, I think you look at the numbers. This is a 20-year, 25, 40-year decision for me. And you look at the graph from earlier, we showed kind of number of rounds either by the state or the last few years, and that's a very zoomed-in picture over a very short period of time, and I'm concerned about what golf looks like in the next 20 years. This is coming from someone who's a golfer. So the decisions we make today are going to have long-term ramifications down the road, and we shouldn't make a decision too quickly. And in my best case scenario, I think we should keep Highland and the Den in Bloomington and then try to divest ourselves of Prairie Vista, because to me that has the best outside sales opportunity for a developer or something like that. Because I think that Highland Park is an easy course that opens people up to the game of golf, and the Den is obviously our gem and has a lot of different events and such there. So that's where I sit right now, but I'm interested to see what the full analysis comes back
So
with.
essentially, as we move forward, you're interested in having the golf courses not treated as a package necessarily.
Right.
And obviously, I think many of us have said, we all felt, I think, that Highland has a special place for lots of reasons. And it's an important green space in the heart of our community. We've heard some of the people impassioned discussions about why and how it's important to them in terms of their life. But it's an important green space, too, even if you're not a golfer. Highland Park and that green space is really an important asset, I think, to our community. So I think that's maybe an important point as Jay and our city manager are moving forward with some of these options. Not all 3 of our golf courses are identical, and maybe not even deal with them as a package.
Exactly.
Alderman Lauer, and then Fergus. Excuse me.
Just a couple things that occur to me. There is an interdependence in our market, I'm sure, and not just with the 3 that we currently maintain, but I'm sure you're looking at the other private courses and Ironwood, et cetera,
Right.
ISU. And the reason I bring that up, there was a period of time at which, I actually have a little family history. I'm not much of a golfer, but I had an uncle that worked at ISU for 40 some odd years and was a huge golfer, backed up to the ISU golf course when it was first developed and spent a lot of time and was a huge supporter. And he was also a frequent uh, attendee and participant at Highland, and it was very close to his heart. And I think that we're seeing a crowd here because of those sentiments. Um, and it occurs to me, and I understand that course in and of itself actually broke even for many, many years. We've got a lot of amenities and improvements that we've made over the years, though, that are expensive. I know my uncle pulled his bag around and actually carried his bag for a number of years. Didn't have paved golf cart paths. Didn't have an actual golf cart. He actually toted everything around, and he was, physically, it was a little bit more challenging, I'm sure. Uh, and so I'm wondering if maybe we couldn't look at, rather than divest ourselves completely of the course altogether, if we couldn't look at it a little bit more like a park and a little bit more of a exercise regime and maybe go back in time a little bit, at least for a short period of time, till our economy improves and we can afford to do some of these things that we're currently doing. Um, what would it take? And these are just what ifs. What would it take? What would it cost? How much would we save if we kind of change the modus operandi, change the purpose of that course, and change the operational face of it? Kind of took a step back in time. Talking with Bobby Mays, and I'm sure you know Bobby, who cares, his staff cares for that course. Um, we both grew up here. I'm sure Jim Fruin can remember this as well. And you predate me, I'm sure, just a little bit anyway. Um, as a kid, I can remember riding in my dad's station wagon into Bloomington from our place down near Hayworth, and looking out and seeing dandelions lining the hills on Highland, and it was kind of pretty. I didn't know what golf was. I didn't really care. Uh, and I think, the folks that have been in our community for many years can probably relate. Uh, are we, you know, from a golfing standpoint, I'm sure we're doing the optimal that we can right now, but there's probably a balance here. And maybe looking at it over time, and you look at your graphs and how popular things are, maybe we should take a step back and look at, and this is from the golfer standpoint, they're going to hate me, but when we're trying to be very, very cost effective, maybe you're looking at raising your rates, and at some point you're going to reach a level at which most of those golfers are not going to want to play that course. And so are we looking at operationally maintaining a cost-effective rate and at some place a balance in terms of what we're doing to maintain that course? Just a thought.
Okay, Alderwoman Burgess?
I'm going to try to be really quick. I just wanted to highlight something that David just said, which to me kind of changes my analysis in terms of what I would recommend going forward, and that is that if we outsource, it has no impact on our capital improvement costs. And those capital improvement costs are the problem that we are facing. That's where the real true budget shortfall is. So I would suggest something along the lines of what Scott mentioned, that perhaps we need to change our focus now that we have more information, and I really appreciate that information having been brought to us, but keeping the conversation focused on how many golf courses do we want to own, and if we want to own fewer than 3, what are our options moving forward on that? And then I'm going to just quit there because we're short on time, and now I'm going to go ahead and move to adjourn the meeting.
Actually, we have
another? Oh, I'm
Alderman
sorry.
Stage.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So again, let's clarify a couple of things, clarify some clarifying comments. This was prioritized by the council as a recommendation from the Budget Task Force. So this didn't go straight from the Budget Task Force to staff. So that's a good point of clarification. Jay, and I appreciate the work that's done here. I'm a little bit, I think maybe perhaps concerned that we have some fairly specific kind of statements called out in these two options, whether it's, what the fee range might be, terms of or length of the contract, whether or not capital improvements are part of it. We really won't know the answers to those until we have a request for proposal.
Yeah, that's pretty safe to say. We've kind of picked the ends,
Sure.
and there's lots of hybrid models that we're seeing as we do our research.
Absolutely. But these bullet points here kind of suggest a much narrower range of options. And again, to be intellectually honest, we won't know until we have a request for proposal. And by then, then we'll have a fair amount of due diligence done and be able to make a better informed decision. All we're talking about doing tonight is moving the process along and engaging some benchmarking work around our golf courses and see where that leads. I don't, at least for me, I don't have a solution in mind. I want to leverage some of the expertise from outside and just, help us know. We may at the end of the day find out, you know what, we're doing it as cost effectively as we can. And then we can grapple with other questions about things like how we're going to fund capital improvements. But the reality is that the golf courses lose money if you figure both operational and capital cost
Correct.
figured into it, right? So, okay. Thank you, Jay.
Okay. Now, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor,
I'm
Mayor,
sorry.
Can I make a few comments?
Oh, sure. Sorry, Jim. Alderman Fruin.
You know, time is short, and we have never had a dedicated discussion of Bloomington golf. This council has never had a dedicated discussion. This is our first discussion as a group. So I don't know where to begin. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. Let me begin by saying, I think any time we can look at what we do and how we do it, regardless of what kind of passion we have for it, it's the right thing to do. I think anytime we can look inside, I think it's the right thing to do. A lot of different opinions on this council as to how we should proceed. A lot of different experience levels, a lot of different levels of expertise. Someone that spoke earlier talked about options 3 and 4. I don't know what those are. I don't know if I've ever seen them, but what are those? I think really what it boils down to is, do we have the strength of the council that this is viable enough that we want to pursue this and go through these steps? Because we've been through this before with our garbage and our recycle and our so forth. We stirred that pot, and then at the end, we didn't make any change. Again, I'll go back to the fact that if we can learn something about our process, the more the better. What I've done here is because I'm a very passionate golfer, I've been contacted by a lot of people over the last month, and I've tried to put those questions in an email that I shared with the entire council today, to the manager, to yourself. And I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. I don't want to delay this process. It seems like there's momentum for the process. But a lot of these questions that have been asked in the public are documented in that email, and I think the public that has asked those questions, that doesn't have time to address them in the next 5 minutes, deserves some answers. So I think the biggest concern that they have is, why is Highland Park, why is golf being targeted as opposed to other parks and rec venues such as Coliseum, the BCPA, the zoo, which you love and you have a passion for. But I think there's a lot of unanswered community questions that we should make a statement tonight as to how we're going to answer that in parallel to if we are going to proceed and get this in motion. I don't want to slow this down. I just want answers to the public to ask the questions.
So you're asking when, I didn't see your email yet, but so you've answers to questions that you've had and that are similar to those that the public has had, and you want those, because obviously this is just the beginning of a discussion of what to do, and I didn't hear any negative feedback for at least investigating this.
And the importance of those questions are, the Budget Task Force developed or discussed a variety of issues, and they couldn't go into the depth that they needed to on any one issue. They had their plates full. This provides a little more depth to some of the questions that the dedicated golfers and the people in the community are asking.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to give them an answer tonight as to how we're going to provide those answers.
Okay,
The documentation
Mr. Hales,
is there, the questions are there, and
so
it's been
just
shared.
So we just need to get this information out? Mr. Hales, do you understand?
But let me just mention one thing, and Alderman Sage made reference to it. In fact, towards the end of the meeting, we'll be talking about the committee of the whole, but I think it's important just to point out, city staff has been focusing on those priorities the council voted on. Out of those 33 items that came out of the Budget Task Force, there were some, I think there was 3 or 4 of them that had 11 votes or more. There's some in the next category, and then there was some with 1 or 2 votes. So we have been focusing our time on those priorities established by the council. Golf was in the top tier. And with tonight, we'll talk about how the BCPA is one of the last of the 4, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and any of the others that got very few votes. And I think that's kind of a discussion for maybe future council, committee of the whole or otherwise, to tackle once we hit the highest voted priorities. How does the council want us to proceed on any of the others, if at all?
Right. Well, we do
But
need to,
anyway, so-
if we can make sure that you get the answers, and then we make those answers those questions public, and then we need to come back and circle back with this and other options, obviously, for our budget process. Okay?
I think we're on the same page, Mayor. I think what we owe the public are answers to the questions that are detailed in this email
Mhm.
that have been surfaced through the public comment this evening or through emails that we've gotten. So the question is, how is the public going to get answers to their questions tonight in light of the short amount of time?
I think what we
And
can do
these
is
are
make sure that
questions-
those are posted, we can operate them, send those answers through Nora, and we can put them on our website.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, and these questions aren't new. Some of them
Right,
have come up
right.
in the last month, but these questions have been occurring since the discussion started,
Right.
the early part of summer.
Okay.
So-
So absolutely, we need those answers, and we'll get them out, and if we don't, then you know how to get hold of me, and we'll make sure that they get out there. Anyway, at this point, I'm sorry, because we are really running late, running up against our other time. Alderwoman Burgess, do you have that motion to adjourn? Yes. Moved. Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. All in favor signify by saying aye. Okay, we will come back in about 5 minutes, so we'll start about 3 minutes late. Apologize. Thank you.